Good evening and welcome. Tonight we will be going over the history and geography of Baghdad in Iraq. Baghdad, of course, is the capital of Iraq, and its most dominating geographic feature by far is the Tigris River, which you might remember from your history classes as one of the rivers of Mesopotamia. You can even see right here, you can see Mesopotamia, which of course means the land between the two rivers. One of them being the Tigris, the other the Euphrates down there. And Baghdad's a very, very large, sprawling city today. And it's got some really interesting sites that we're going to look at on Google Earth. Sadly, there's no UNESCO sites in Baghdad. And if you're wondering why, well, let's get into the history so you can find out why some of the very famous sites there are no longer standing. Sites that would have been UNESCO sites if they still existed. So correct me if I'm wrong, but I'm pretty sure Baghdad is the first ever planned capital city. There are lots and lots around the world. Of course, there's Washington, D.C. here in America. Brasilia is a beautiful planned capital city. Where else? Myanmar's built one. I don't know why that was the first example that came to mind after Brasilia. Gosh. Now, of course, I'm blanking on other planned capital cities. But you know what I'm talking about. Abuja in Nigeria, that's one. Places that were either tiny, small towns or nothing at all even. And the government decided this land is going to be our capital city. And they set out to purposefully make it beautiful with lots of stunning architecture, placing important places in a certain way. And Baghdad was, I believe, again, correct me if I'm wrong, the first place where that ever happened. In 762, the city was commissioned by the Abbasid Caliph, the Abbasid dynasty, being one of the major Muslim dynasties in history, and definitely like the biggest and most important in this corner of the world. At the time, the Caliph was named Al-Mansur, and he really went out of his way to make sure that the city was positioned just so and just right at just the right time. He made sure the stars were aligned just so, and made sure everything made sense from a spiritual and astronomical perspective, and even commissioned people from different religions. The two main city planners were Zoroastrian and Jewish, just to make sure everything was perfect cosmically, which I think is awesome. Not a lot of capital cities that are that planned out to the detail. Baghdad was a round city. I think there were other round cities before then. I want to say like it was the first major round city. It was definitely the biggest. But by that, it's exactly what it sounds like. In the center, they built a big round wall and had all of the important buildings inside of the rounded walls. And it was a very special place. At one point, it was the largest city in the world. I think in terms of population and size. Again, correct me if I'm wrong. There's a lot of facts that I read about Baghdad throughout history, and when I went back to corroborate, I couldn't find the sources. So do correct me if I'm wrong. I read all of this somewhere. The golden age of Islam was centered here on Baghdad, mostly during the reign of Harun al-Rashid. And Baghdad at this time was known for many important things, including the House of Wisdom, probably the largest library in the world at the time, and people would come from all over the world to Baghdad to study at the library and the universities. It was a city of learning, and it was very, very prestigious if you went to Baghdad for your education, for your, higher education in terms of medicine, philosophy, astronomy, mathematics, all of the higher learning subjects. Also, if you know the story 1001, the 1001 Nights, I want to say it's like the 1001 Arabian Nights, but I'm pretty sure its official title is 1001 Nights. Again, correct me if I'm wrong. But it was written in Baghdad during this time. It wasn't always controlled by the Abbasids, because they came and went in terms of power, but it did stay a very prominent position. It was a Seljuk capital for quite a while. The Seljuks eventually would become the Ottomans, which would eventually become the Turks that we know today in Turkey. But sadly, its glory days came to a very abrupt end on February 10th, 1258, when the Mongols invaded. They breached the walls and sacked the city, destroying the libraries, destroying pretty much everything, and slaughtering almost the entire population of the city, which was in the millions at the time. The city lay in ruins. The area was controlled by an Ilkhanate, a Mongol power that, I'm not sure which Ilkhanate it was, but they were controlled by the Mongols. And the city was conquered by Timur or Tamerlane in 1393, expanding his empire. He was also a Mongol. He was a grandson of Genghis Khan. He went out of town for a while after he controlled Baghdad. And when he found out that the guy that he placed in charge to take care of Baghdad for him was overthrown by the previous ruler, he came back in 1401 and completely destroyed the city. This time he actually did kill everyone in the city and burned down pretty much anything that hadn't already been burned down by the Mongols before. And the city lay in complete ruin. It was completely sacked. So that is why I think we don't really have any kind of UNESCO sites. There's some, I want to say there's an intangible site that's associated with Baghdad, but no physical ones. I think that's because anything that would have been like the House of Wisdom was completely destroyed. They've been trying to rebuild the old universities on the sites where they once stood, kind of like we just did Babylon a few weeks ago. How they tried to do the same in Babylon, but it's obviously not the same, right? It's quite devastating in the long span of history that this absolutely stunning, amazing city is lost forever. And not just like, the sands of time, it just became irrelevant. No, it was destroyed. That's so sad. It eventually came under the control of the Ottomans in 1534, the Ottoman Empire. The Ottoman Empire would famously collapse at the end of World War I. The area here fell under the British Mandate in 1920. But in 1932, once Iraq was fully independent as the Kingdom of Iraq, it became the capital city once again. The Kingdom of Iraq would not last long. There was a coup in 1958 where the kingdom was overthrown, and modern Iraq as we know it today was formed. This is when the Freedom Monument was built, which I'm going to show you on Google Earth. It's it says on Wikipedia that it's the most beloved landmark in Baghdad. There's a lot of really amazing landmarks to show you, but apparently that one is the most important because it commemorates the start of a new era here in Iraq, the overthrow of the kingdom. After Iraq became a major petroleum power, a lot of that money was sent to Baghdad for modernization in the early 1970s. But sadly, Iraq's history would enter a very dark period that still technically goes on to this day in the late 1970s with the Iraq-Iran War. Iran, of course, is right over here. Both countries went to war. Baghdad was bombed in airstrikes during the war. And even though neither side won, it was pretty much a stalemate, of course. Saddam Hussein, who was in charge of Iraq at the time, declared victory and built the very famous Victory Arch, which I'll show you on Google Earth. It's like when I think Baghdad landmark, I think of the Victory Arch. It's two big swords crossing like this in this giant, giant arch. It's really cool, I think. A lot of monuments were built during Saddam's time. He liked to spend a lot of money on very frivolous, very cosmetic things, and some really neat sites were built in Baghdad and in various places of Iraq, but at the cost of the many people of Iraq, especially the minorities of Iraq, who paid for Saddam's life of luxury with their lives. Saddam Hussein very famously invaded Kuwait in 1990, triggering the Gulf War. Baghdad was bombed toward the end of it in January 1991 by the Allies. But of course, that was not the end of Baghdad's war troubles, because Iraq was invaded by a U.S. coalition in 2003. Now, if you don't know the story of what happened there, I'll tell you. So, President George H.W. Bush was in charge of the United States during the Gulf War. And, one of his goals was obviously to overthrow Saddam Hussein and control Iraq's oil, which didn't happen. There was victory. Kuwait was freed. Kuwait's down here, if you don't know, like literally. I can't move the pages, but it's just down here. Kuwait was freed from Iraqi occupation, but Saddam was not overthrown. So when Bush's son, George W. Bush, became president, I'm pretty sure it was just a Bush family vendetta to get Saddam however possible. So after the 9/11 terrorist attacks, the Bush administration claimed that Saddam was hoarding and creating weapons of mass destruction, and that they needed to invade the country to get them and stop Iraq from building these horrible weapons like nuclear weapons and poisons, things like that. Very famously, there were no WMDs. It was all a lie. And Iraq suffered because of it. But they did overthrow Saddam. And I'll tell you the story of my experience of that, because I was in high school when this happened. I was in speech class where we were preparing for a speech competition. So we were in groups working, and our speech coach comes in and is like, they've done it. They got Baghdad. We control Iraq. We did it. And she turns on the news, and they're showing a live broadcast in Baghdad of a big statue of Saddam that had only been put up the previous year being torn down, and we were crowded around the TV, very excited to see. And it was the most unimpressive thing you can imagine. So there's Saddam's statue. Pretend this eraser Saddam. And they've got ropes around it, and they start pulling it down. And I'm like, this is kind of cool because it looks like regular Iraqi citizens tearing the statue down. But I'm sure there was lots of American soldiers in there as well, pulling it down. So it starts to go, and then it just kind of like flops. And he's just hanging from his ankles. And they keep trying to tug it so it topples all the way to the ground, and they can't get it. And after a while, they just kind of give up and just go like, yay. And I'm just like, oh, that was very anticlimactic. And for me, that moment is really indicative of the entire Iraq invasion. That it was this huge rush of glory to come in and save the people from Saddam Hussein, which they did. But it just completely backfired in every possible way. A huge insurgency sprang up centered here in Baghdad and many other major Iraq cities against the invaders, who of course were committing horrific acts against the people here that we won't get into for YouTube reasons. That insurgency lasted until 2013, and Baghdad was never really the same after that. Many parts of the city were completely ravaged. And even more sad for Baghdad's history is that the main museum here was looted and priceless artifacts were lost. Many insurgents and militants sold them on the black market, including like the owner of Hobby Lobby bought some. That's why I don't shop at Hobby Lobby. There's a lot of reasons you cannot shop at Hobby Lobby. That's mine. That's unforgivable. But the violence did not end in 2013. It only just began when another militant group known as ISIS began its attacks against anyone that they considered was not Muslim enough. And that lasted until about 2018, and they were finally pushed out. And, you know, this is YouTube. I have to be careful what I say, or else YouTube's going to give me a big no-no strike. But I feel like a lot of you know about the horrors at that time, so I don't need to go into detail. Plus, this is a relaxation video. So, Baghdad today is very peaceful. I also read that I couldn't corroborate later, but I read this somewhere that Baghdad had the highest rates of terrorist attacks in the 2010s. That's not so now. There have been some episodes here and there, but they're extremely rare nowadays. And Baghdad, since about 2021, 22, has really been flourishing. They've really been rebuilding in some pretty remarkable ways. The most interesting one is that there are plans in the works right now to build an above-ground unmanned metro system to get people, to get people around the city easier. It's still in the works. I don't think they've broke ground on it yet, but it's been planning. Actually, Saddam Hussein started planning a metro system back in the 70s, but it never happened. But only in the past couple of years have they really been serious about creating a metro system here, which I think would be really cool, to be honest. There's a lot of issues with it, and like I said, I'm pretty sure they have not broken ground on it yet. But it's in the works, and I feel like it is going to happen. And that's really cool. Public transit's always a good thing in big cities, I think. And that's pretty much where we are today. I said in yesterday's video that Baghdad's one of my dream cities to visit. Mesopotamia in general, to see the museums and just, stand in places where the center of the world once stood along with me, That's the same for Babylon during its height, the same for Baghdad at its height. I would love to visit someday. Get some good shawarma. But let's go explore around. I'm going to show you the green zone and all of the cool monuments. Let's go check it out. So here is Baghdad. You can see just how sprawling it is, right? You can see the Tigris River flowing right through it. Let's start by zooming out so you can see exactly where we are in the world. First, you can see from above the Tigris River and Euphrates River coming down and making this fertile land here, which we call Mesopotamia today. It would have extended further out. But that was historic Mesopotamia. Here's the rest of the world. You can see Saudi Arabia, Iran, there's Turkey, and Baghdad's right there. Right between all of them, to be honest. And look how huge it is from above. It is absolutely a massive city. Where to start? I guess we'll start over here at the National Museum. Let's see what artifacts we have left. There's still some stunning pieces that were saved, or maybe they're just so big that they couldn't be carried out by looters, right? lots of artifacts from ancient Babylon or even maybe ancient Assyria, ancient Mesopotamia. And yeah, sadly, a lot of it was stolen and can be found scattered throughout the world whenever it's found. Don't buy artifacts, okay, guys? 9 times out of 10, very bad people stole them and they're selling them for very dubious reasons. So there's not a lot there, but there is still a lot to see. So I told you I'd show you the green zone. And here it is. This is where we have lots of beautiful parks, the zoo, lots of really cool monuments and things. Big lake, of course. And this is a really interesting monument right at the tip here, Saving the Culture, which is like a physical depiction of it, right? We can see a cylinder here with cuneiform written on it, and there is a man with many arms holding it up in order to preserve it, in order to save that culture, doing everything they can to keep it up. It's a little eerie, right? Oh, there's also, you can see the big, I want to say Ferris wheel. I guess it is. It's like the London Eye. Like it's up there in the green zone where you can see everything. I don't know. It is a little creepy because I can't tell if it's one person or just many, just kind of mushed together in one big statue, but it looks like, and here it is glowing like it's Dr. Manhattan holding it up. Interesting lighting. But I don't know. It's a little, see, it's like the London Eye. Whoops. I think I only see 2 pairs of legs and 1 head. But, I mean, once you get the meaning of it, it is very important, isn't it? Saving the culture, preserving it, keeping it up and important, and the focus, you know. We've got to see, well, down here's the Victory Arch I told you about. Let's start over here. This is the Unknown Soldier Monument, which these are all very, like, these are all very beautiful, right? But remember that they were built by Saddam Hussein for, like, luxurious reasons. So, of course, it's kind of like Pyongyang, right? Building something huge and grand just to pat your own ego. But nevertheless, it is a monument for soldiers who lost their lives during the Iraq-Iran War. And here's the Victory Arch. I think it's really cool, even though it's a little daunting, you know. Let me show it to you. It's over here. You can see. Just like you drive underneath it. I mean, it's also kind of giving Pyongyang, right? But, and again, built by, oh, look at all the tanks coming underneath it. The Americans invading, or the American coalition forces. Many countries invaded, along with the United States. But, I don't know. I feel like it's just a, oh my gosh, this person's in the hand. It's like just a part of Baghdad's history now, right? Let's see if I can remember where the other really beautiful monument is. I think it's over here. Firdos Square is where that statue, as I told you about. Here's Liberation Square. I think this is where the, come back. Yes, this is the monument I told you about. Liberation Monument. Built after the Iraq-Iran War. No, sorry. Built after the overthrow of the kingdom and the establishment of modern Iraq. That's when this was built. And it is pretty neat. It's obviously not as like luxurious as all of the other monuments are, but it's very to the point, isn't it? Just showing the construction of the city. I wonder if that's I can't see what that is. It won't let me zoom in anymore on Google Earth. That's such a travesty. I think it's actually down here. I think it might be down here somewhere. I cannot remember where it is, but I gotta show it to you. Of course, like, Google Earth wants to show me all the fun theme parks and things. I showed you that one because I am a child deep down, and of course I'd want to visit all of the theme parks. And there's so many. My goodness, so many indoor parks and all kinds of things. It's showing me. See, there's one right there. All throughout the city. Okay, the martyrs. Oh, sorry, it was up here. This one is also, I think this is the most beautiful one visually. But again, built by Saddam Hussein, so take it with, see, there's another theme park, Sinbad Land. That's awesome. But look how beautiful. I thought this was a painting at first. No, this is the sculpture. And this was to commemorate the soldiers who also lost their lives during the Iraq-Iran War. It looks like a mosque's dome is being popped open, and inside is a beautiful flag of Iraq. There it is being built. Beautiful hallways inside, all lit up at night. Beautiful flag there. It's neat inside, and so neat from above. It's absolutely gorgeous, but built by one of the most problematic people in history. So lots of cool sights to see, even if they do have quite a dubious history. Speaking of, why don't we go look at Saddam's palace? Obviously, all of Saddam's palaces have been completely looted and things. I think I have the everything I do. I don't need to see grocery stores. They've all been horrifically looted, of course. There's another amusement park. There's people yelling outside. It is 2 in the morning exactly. I can't help that. It's literally 2 in the morning. Saddam Hussein's palace in Baghdad. I'm getting lost here. They're obviously in the giant man-made lake. His main palace here in Baghdad, which of course had his face all over it. All these beautiful designs, but it is completely gutted and violated. It's graffiti all over it. There's a little swimming pool. Now this, and look, it's bombed out also. If you're gonna loot a place, loot the dictator's mansions, right? Don't loot the museums. Loot the mansions of the person who oppressed you and murdered millions. That I'm fine with. Look, it's just ripped apart. Rightly so. All the windows smashed out. Oh, look at that. Totally destroyed. What was once a gorgeous, luxurious palace is now rubble. There's also... Gosh, am I going to be able to find it? Those are big towers there. I saw it from above, and I went, what's that? And then it was this huge mosque that Saddam had started building, but was unable to complete, probably because there was kind of a lot going on due to being invaded. Just little things like that. Let's see. Mosque. If you think if I type in mosque, it'll somehow pop up. None of the shrines. Maybe this one. No, but that is gorgeous. Look at this. Abu Hanifa Mosque, also known as the Grand Imam Mosque, is the prominent Sunni mosque in Baghdad. Wow. There's a lot of Sunni and Shia kind of balanced here in Baghdad. I didn't really get into it in history. Baghdad, from what I read today, is primarily Sunni, which is like the largest branch of Islam. Think how like Catholicism is a branch of Christianity. But there's also a lot of Shia, or Shiite, which is like the second largest branch of Islam, which Saddam is a part of, and would persecute those who did not follow his exact religious beliefs according to his political party, the Ba'ath Party. Let's see if this is it. This is it. Of course, I couldn't find it from above. But it was planned to be this absolutely massive thing, and look, it's like just not, there's still cranes all around it. don't know if it was bombed or not. But from what I read, it was begun by Saddam Hussein in 1998, but work was cut short during the 2003 invasion. It was never completed, and only its skeleton remains today. It looks like it's from like a sci-fi movie. Like this could be in Mos Eisley or in like Dune or something. It looks space age. It's so weirdly shaped. I'm sure it would have been very beautiful if completed, and I bet it would have been painted all kinds of beautiful colors, because right now it's just mud brown because it was never finished. But it's a strange blobby building just sitting there. I wonder what they're going to do with it. I wonder if they're ever just going to finish it, or what? Make it into a museum? Make it into something? Maybe, or just knock it down, Gosh, what else should we see? There's so much to see here. Let's explore. Let's look at one more place. I guess we could head back to the green zone and see something fun. You know what I found that was really fun? But I gotta find it. I think it was over here. This one. The Babylonian Gardens. Which I should probably just show you. I'll show you this after, but you gotta see this little garden here that looks like it's ancient Babylon. That's so cool. All the old statues here. Oh, that's it? Nah, I saw a different sideshow of this place, I swear. Just a little garden to look like Babylon. I think that's neat. I would want to see that. Let's close out just by looking at the parks slideshow here. Big roller coasters. Big lake. Look how pretty. This is where I would be. There's the monument. So thank you so much for watching. If you enjoyed this style of content, please consider subscribing. There's flamingos here and a very wet horse getting splashed. Next in my series, we're going to be heading back to Afghanistan. I told you guys we're going to be there a lot in the coming weeks. There'll be a lot more to say about this next region of Afghanistan than the last one. So be sure to subscribe so you won't miss out. Very famous books about the lions of Baghdad, but it makes my heart break hearing the story about how the zoo was abandoned and the lions had to fend for themselves, roaming the streets. And a lot of them were shot or starved to death. It's so sad. Just one of the many tragedies of Baghdad's recent history, but everything is looking up here in the city, which I'm very grateful for. So I hope you found this video relaxing and educational, and I hope that you have a good